Greetings and welcome, everyone. I'm Congresswoman Yvette D. Clarke, and I proudly represent New York's Ninth District, that's Central and South Brooklyn. I'm also one of the co chairs of the Congressional Multicultural Media Caucus. Let me start by thanking everyone at SiriusXM for joining the Multicultural Media Caucus as we embark on this critical discussion. I'd also like to thank today's panelists for offering their unique experiences and viewpoints as we work together to overcome diversity disparities in the audio and entertainment industry. Through collaborations between the public and private sectors, such as today's discussion, we can identify the best possible practices for improving the media industry through significant action. Audio entertainment is, on a fundamental level, a diverse and innovative space. The ideas and voices so thoroughly ingrained in modern culture belong to individuals from every background and every walk of life. However, the modern audio entertainment industry intended to bolster and propagate our diverse ideas and voices does not reflect our diversity. As a consequence, artists and culture are restricted and underserved audiences are forgotten. It is imperative diverse voices can flourish in audio entertainment spaces. Accomplishing that goal must start from the bottom up and be forged into an immutable part of this industry's infrastructure. I first the first step must begin with the industry's talent pipeline. Cultivating opportunities for gifted, diverse young people creates a culture that focuses on positioning the industry to be inclusive and sets the framework for the next generation of industry leaders to succeed. We can only achieve this mission through the commitment and partnership of private organizations like SiriusXM and others. Let me be very clear. I'm confident diversity can flourish in the audio entertainment industry, and with that flourishing culture of diversity, we will see the industry as a whole continue to flourish. So thank you once again to SiriusXM for joining our caucus for such a pivotal conversation. With that, allow me to hand things over to our dynamic moderator, Dion Summers. Dion Summers is currently the Vice President of Music Programming for SiriusXM's hip hop, R&B, gospel, and reggae formatted channels. In this capacity, he manages a team of program directors that oversee music and ear talent for The Heat, Hip Hop Nation, Shade 45, LL Cool J's Rock the Bells Radio, Kirk Franklin's Praise, Heart and Soul, The Joint, Sirius XM Fly, The Groove, Soul Town, and Sirius XM Silk. He's also been responsible for building and maintaining several artist channels on the platform, from the likes of Michael Jackson, Prince, Janet Jackson, Bob Marley, and others. Dion has been with SiriusXM since 2005, and prior to joining the company, Dion has held senior programming roles at iHeartRadio, Radio One in Miami, and his native Baltimore. With that, let me turn things over to Dion Summers.
Thank you, Representative Clarke. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you to the Multicultural Media Caucus for what I'm sure is a very important and long overdue conversation about inclusion, about increased diversity and equity in the talent pipeline. It's my honor to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me. The bio that you read, I always kind of blush a little bit. So I'm like, is that me? Is that really me? But the bio that you read, and thank you, you know, is totally off the shoulders of mentors and support groups and um, not necessarily official functions in place that got all of us to where we are, right? I wish there was such a program as this when I was in my formative, years in my career, where companies had programs, that would mentor people who look different like me and like our panelists and give us access to have that important seat at the table, which is why I'm really thankful that I'm here today to kind of foster those conversations. So thank you again for inviting me to be a part of this.
Thank you, Dion.
And we've assembled some very diverse and amazing talent to help have this conversation as well. People who have fought to have their seats at the table and who continue to leave that door open for the next generation of talent and the next generation of broadcasters. So with us today in our talented panel is the amazing Nicole Huey. She's the Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion for Sirius XM, Pandora, and Stitcher. She leads all the DEI efforts across our organization, and she works closely with HBCUs, which I'm sure she'll get into in a moment. It's a pleasure to have you, Nicole, as always.
Thank you.
Also, a brother who I wish I had known when I was coming up, because I surely would have been all over your radio station. He's the general manager of Slam Radio, which is a radio station based out of Miami that you can hear right here on our platform on channel 145. For high school students, man, I would be all over that radio station. They called me Neon Dion back in the day. You would have been sick of me, bro. Seriously. Larry Million is here. It's my pleasure to meet you as well, Larry.
And what a privilege to meet you, Mr. Summers, and to be invited to this is quite an honor. I'm looking forward to talking about our unique radio station.
Absolutely, absolutely. And also we have Joan Baker, who's the co-founder of the Society of Voice Arts and Sciences. She's a voiceover talent, which is a spot very close to my heart. She's an author, an actor, an on-camera host as well, and a very passionate advocate for expanding diversity. So you're at the right place. Very nice to meet you as well, Joan.
Yeah, thank you, Dion. By the way, you have an incredible voice.
Thank you. Just so you know, I'm
first thing that stood out.
I'm 6'4". I can't play any basketball. This is all I've got. Okay?
And it's beautiful.
We can do other things. We can.
Thank you. Yes. That's the overarching theme of this conversation, right? We can do other things. Thank you. But welcome to all three of you. It's going to be a great conversation. So to kick things off, I want to start with you, Nicole, and I want to know, well, from all of you, but we'll start with Nicole, how your experiences have shaped the work you do today. I'll kind of start it off and kind of give us all kind of a starter into the conversation. Like, I know, coming up in the 90s where, no one looked like me at all, even at Radio One, which is a Black-owned entertainment company, a lot of times we were all we had, and there were no systems in place. I had to have internships. I had to meet people during my internship. I had to break the rules and talk to people that I wasn't supposed to talk to to gain advice and mentorship and leadership and tell me how this is done. So grateful that now there are people like you in these powerful positions, Nicole, to actually influence programs for the next Nicole, for the next Dion, for the next Joan, for the next Larry. So how have your experiences shaped the work that you do today, Nicole? And how do you approach increasing diversity at Sirius XM, Pandora, Stitcher in the process?
So thank you for that question, Dion. And it's so important for people to bring all of themselves to anything that we do. I always say, this is my life's work. I will do this until I'm no longer breathing, no longer kicking in this earth. And let me tell you why. I, as a Black female in corporate America, understand what it feels like to be unheard, when feels like to be unseen, to really think that there's something about my diversity that's undervalued and not appreciated. I know what that feels like, right? I know what it feels like to put my head down, work so very hard, and think somebody will notice me, and they never do. I know what it feels like to have people work with me in the office every single day. And then when they see me on the street, they're like, who is that? She doesn't look familiar. So all of those things make up who I am. And all of those things is why I do this work. It is critical for what you said, Dion, not just for me, right? My journey will end soon, but there are so many other young people starting off in their careers where their journey is just starting. And I only hope that by the time I do this work, that folks will see my life as an example of what they can do as well. Again, this is what I do. This is what I love. I came to Sirius because I wanted to be at a place that had an open platform. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is perspective. And so when I think about perspectives and making sure that all of those perspectives, whether I agree with them or not, are at the table, I wanted to be at a place where I felt like they gave a platform for that. And so that's why I'm here. Again, I will do this work. I've had a great time doing it. I work with some amazing people in the organization that believe what I believe, that it's about open perspectives. It's about giving people a platform to be authentically who they are, and to make sure that we're creating a place where people thrive. At the end of the day, we all want to thrive, be successful, and be recognized for it. I don't want to just put my head down and think somebody will see me. I want people to see me for who I am. And that's why I'm doing this type of work.
I love the reference to seat at the table. Like, we're going to be referencing that, too many times in this conversation, and we should. Like, I can recall times where, my seat at the table as a vice president in the music space, where if I didn't speak up, the content that you would have heard on the other side of the speaker could have been, anywhere from embarrassing to just downright offensive. And so that's what really necessitates, people like Nicole being at the forefront. And as part of your life's work as well, Nicole, I want to get into also your work with historically Black colleges and universities, because I can tell you, in the past year and change that you've been with the company, I believe, I've already seen a difference in how we recruit, who we recruit, how we address each other, the respect factor that comes along with a more diverse workplace is already apparent within our organization. So can you speak a little bit about what we've done with HBCUs in your space?
Yes, absolutely. So we've been intentional, right? So we all know there are about 107 HBCUs across the country. And so while we all know that, not many of us have been intentional in our work with HBCUs. And that's what we decided to do. We said that there are some talented young people out there that need an opportunity. And I think what makes our approach different, and we call our program path-based, is that we are taking this talent and asking them, what is it that you want to do? Here is what we have. Here's our platform. What do you want to do as you start your career? And that makes our program a little bit different. At the end of the day, there's talent out there. At the end of the day, we have to be intentional about going after that talent. And that's exactly what we've done through our program. We want you tell us what you want to do, and then we'll make sure that there's a home for you. But we don't stop there, because most people get people in, but they don't look for them. We have an entire opportunity to nurture that talent as well. Mentors, they get executives that connect with them. They get opportunities to get exposure. And so it's more than just bringing them in, it's nurturing them while they're there. And so we're really intentional about that. We're very serious about talent, bringing them in and nurturing them. And so we'll continue to do that work, because one is the right thing to do. But more important than that, there's some great talent out there that we have got to tap into. And we're starting with our HBCUs.
Excellent. You talk about nurturing talent, and when you talk about nurturing young talent, that's right in Larry's wheelhouse. Like I said, I wish there were a high school, a radio station where high school students could be engaged. You would have gotten so sick of me. And, Nicole mentions life's work as well. You're a veteran radio host. You can do this in your sleep. So let's talk, Larry, about what led you here and what you're doing to increase diversity down there in the MIA.
It's funny that you asked that question, because throughout my career, I was always able to lend a helping hand to somebody who was coming up in the business. And well, it's a unique business when you're talking sports radio. And how do I put this? It's not a necessity. It's not your news radio. It's not the high ratings. It's not what brings in the dollars and cents. But there's a unique listenership to AM radio that brings a lot of other dollars and a lot of attention to your station. So when I started in the business, they didn't really value a lot of what we were doing on the air. And being the first ever Spanglish radio, sports radio show on the air back in 2006 here in South Florida, we almost took it for granted what we were doing. We were having a great time speaking both languages. But along the way, we were creating a very unique niche that, well, now it's kind of cool to be multicultural in the sense of being Hispanic and talking Spanish and doing the mannerisms of Cubans or other ethnicities within Latin America. And I think the one thing that came out of all of this was an ability to help others identify with who they were, whether they were from Ecuador, whether they're from Cuba, whether they were Puerto Rican, to identify with who they were and not be afraid of who they were. So coming on to this project 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago with Slam Radio, this is in Little Havana. This is in a very, very small, humble community. It's old school in Miami. Dion, you know what I'm talking about. But there's a lot of, non-intact families. There's a lot of people from other countries that are coming in that are hiding from La Migla. There's a lot of tension in that community that's not normal of other communities. So the kids that come to school at Slam sometimes are timid, tepid, and afraid of their own shadow. Slam Radio, before I figure out who might be a radio talent, I've got to get these kids to come out of their own shell and not be afraid of saying things and understanding that they have a right to speak up and they have a right to have a voice, regardless of what they think the situation may be. We don't do politics on Slam Radio. What we do is we do love and understanding and teamwork. A lot of the stuff that when you do the business of radio, you don't see a lot of that because the person next to you might not want to help you that much. You know what I mean? And I experienced that a lot in radio coming up. To be able to work with these young adults, as I don't call them teenagers and I won't call them kids, is such a privilege because you get to see at the core of it all who they really are. And the beauty of it is they allow their true persona to come out. They build a trust factor with either myself or my executive producer of the station, Frank Fernandez. And we do a wonderful job of identifying that talent and making them feel comfortable in the space. But it all comes through mentorship. If they don't believe in what I've got to say or what Frank has to say, you can forget about it, guys. They will not pay attention. And that's something that our ambassador, Pitbull, Armando Christian Perez, taught me right off the bat. He says, be real with them, Larry. Let them see the true you, and they'll buy into what you've got. And this has been beyond a privilege. Yeah, I'm a radio veteran, but I got to tell you, anything that's worth a darn that I've accomplished it with these young adults by my side, whether it's the NFL's radio row for the Super Bowl or on Good Morning America, like we were featured last year by TJ Holmes. These are all been honors and privileges, but these kids, these young adults shine the brightest when the lights shine the brightest. And that's where I think with the true mentorship and giving them positive reinforcement, these young adults, they can accomplish the world. By the way, 72%, I think, is the number of young ladies that make up Slam Radio. In other words, a lot of young ladies want to learn their own voice and responsibility, which has been very astonishing, but very fulfilling because we get to shape and make them understand that they have a voice and they don't need to be afraid of speaking up.
Yeah, mentorship is a powerful thing, Larry. I always say, like, as a radio station program director, nobody's going to remember, the songs you played, right? No one remembers, the songs that I added. I'm adding songs today on Sirius XM. Won't nobody remember that, but they'll remember, how you were mentored. They'll remember the conversations that you had. They remember, your shoulders that you gladly kind of gave so that they can kind of rise the same way we rose up the ranks. So I think that's a wonderful, wonderful thing, especially for our young people. I'm curious, Larry, after Slam Radio, how's the success rate of students that go on to other facets of broadcasting, having had the background that you provided them and the mentorship you provided them through Slam?
Well, we're very encouraged what we've seen thus far. We're going to celebrate our third birthday in December. So we, with a pandemic taking up half of our time since we've been on the air, we've had some unique challenges like getting students in to record content and do other things. But to be quite honest with you, we've had some students that have already graduated and gone on to universities into the School of Communications of their choice. We had one young lady who was halfway out the door of school in 9th grade. And with us, she finished the year as our student general manager, got accepted to 4 different universities, turned down the University of Hawaii to attend Florida International University. But it was a young lady who will tell you herself, she gained confidence in herself through learning her own voice and not being afraid of the microphone. And that's what a privilege to teach these young adults that takes mentorship. It takes patience, sometimes going outside the script to let them feel comfortable with who they are. And honestly, it's one of those things that I got to thank Sirius XM for having the foresight to have stations like ours available and just embrace what we bring to the table, because sometimes it's student radio, but sometimes it's just magical. And I got to be honest with you, I've 20 years on radio. It's the best time I've ever had, bar none. It's not even close.
Can I jump in and say something to what, Larry, you just mentioned around teaching, these young folks to have a voice? We always say in this DE&I space, if we could catch people before they become working adults and giving them the space to have their own voice and teaching them about empathy and how to talk to people and respect, if we can catch them early, then, corporate America and work environments in general will be a much better place. So thank you. Thank you for that work. You're making our jobs easier by teaching them those things before they get in. Listen, there are so many things that happen to us in the workspace that make our voice waver, makes us nervous, squashes our voice, that if we can then just go back to when we were young and can remember the confidence we had, it'll be a very different ballgame with these companies. People will step up, step out, and be able to provide their authentic self in the voice that feels right for them, not the voice that somebody told them to have, but the voice that feels right for them. So thank you. We want all of your folks, Larry. We like that. We like that. Bring them on.
Thank you for providing that platform for us. And to finish asking or answering the nature of people moving in other media angles, for example, in front of a TV. We have 2 students that are aspiring to be television reporters. We have a rap artist that graduated last year that is making hits already. And little things like that, I think it buys into the mentorship and giving them the confidence to speak up, but also to learn how to say things correctly and to do it in a respectful manner. Because I tell them, just because you have a voice doesn't mean you can just say whatever you want. There's a responsibility to that voice, and we teach them that as well.
I love that. I love the confidence, to your point, and what Nicole referenced as well. There's certain things you just can't teach, right? Like you can't teach confidence. You show confidence through mentorship, through leadership. Those traits, also to Nicole's point, those are traits you take with you your entire career. And that helps you out tremendously at the table when you're at the table and, and there's a disagreement or there's a point of contention. At times, those mentorship skills, what did Larry tell me about how to handle these things? Got it. Like, those are skills you take with you for a lifetime, man. So God bless you, brother. And as a radio geek, the fact that you're like getting that next generation already just gives me goosebumps, man. So thank you for all that you do, brother.
Thank you so very much. Again, it's having Sirius XM by our side. We do Radio Row, and the first day we're there, Sway looks over at us and says, "What's going on?" He jumps on with us, and these kids are just marveled that they're in the middle of the biggest stage on the biggest stage, which is Super Bowl Radio Row, and there they are sitting next to Sway Calloway talking on the radio. Like, you can't make that stuff up, and it's when I point to those things and I show pictures to people, this is what our students are experiencing. No wonder they shine brightest when the lights are brightest, because they're exposed to it. And thanks to Sirius XM for that, because we wouldn't be able to do it without you guys.
Thank you, man. Thank you. And speaking of confidence, let's talk to Joan, because Joan, you're someone who I'm convinced built your own path when there was none. You co-founded your own nonprofit. You run your voiceover company. You've written books. So I'm very curious as to the path that led you here, because you're like, you know what? Ain't no bridge. I'm going to build my own bridge.
Well, you know what? By process of elimination, that's what happened. I didn't necessarily set out to do it, but by process of elimination, in other words, show business is very different than I think corporate, in the sense that you kind of along the way you realize what's working, what's not working, and you train so that you become skilled and qualified to do things. By the way, if I could teach one thing, it would be confidence, because I think that opens the door to any area, no matter what you're doing in life. But yeah, I couldn't even get arrested. And partly it was because of how I looked. Even though I ended up being in voiceover, I couldn't get arrested on camera because when people looked at me, they couldn't put me in a box. And that's the thing about show business. You have to be put into like a box so that you can be brought out in auditions. It's always based on type. So my type was not in. It was confusing, people would say, or advertisers would say it was confusing. People would be too busy looking, trying to figure out who you are versus the product itself. So it was very hard and very frustrating, but I did not see myself doing anything else but being in show business. So by hook or crook, I got into voiceover. And voiceover, of course, happens to be an area in show business that you can't see the person, you can only hear them. So it was as if the lock got unlocked. The key to the lock got unlocked, and all of a sudden the world opened up to me, at least for a while. And then as time went on, it was about breaking down doors by even being a woman. I don't know if you remember, but commercials used to be almost all men. And voiceover is a male-dominated industry, although that's changing as well. But it has been the entire time. So one thing I feel that is very important in terms of voice acting is developing your voice. Because right now, the competition, when you look at television and you watch commercials, or you're watching a TV show, the competition no longer is the person going out and doing the dishes or vacuuming the floor. The competition is your phone. And people immediately look down on their phones. They're on Facebook, they're on Twitter, right? So your voice signature is very important today more than ever, so that you can capture the attention of the listener for them not to go to their phone, right? Or not to go on Facebook or wherever they may go. But your voice is now a very powerful instrument versus even your look. So voice today is really an instrument that is important to train. It's also important to be able to tap into who you are and your authenticity, because like we're talking about today, authenticity, it's huge in voiceover. And so people train to do that, to be able to let go of whatever the barriers or blocks that block you from, being you. And that is a hot topic today in the voice acting world. Just like diversity and inclusion is also a hot topic in the voiceover world today. So me coming from basically crawling and scratching my way, I started to develop allies and mentors. And also I felt like I was someone that I felt like I had been pulled back for so long, said no to for so long. That's why I started to create my own way. And so I built to not just writing secrets of voiceover success, that also included a diversity of people in voiceover that are very successful and their journeys. So anyone reading the book can learn from the journeys of the people in the book and relate to any one of them. But also developing a platform called Society of Voice Arts and Sciences. And we focus on two events. One of them is That's Voiceover, and it's the educational aspect of voice acting. And there's so much education of voice acting today in order to really become a success and to really rely on it as a living. It takes a lot of training and in different areas. So there's That's Voiceover, and that's been around for 11 to 12 years. This is our 12th year. And then in 2013, 14, and I say we in terms of my partner as well, and he's also my husband, Rudy Gaskins. we created the Voice Arts Awards, which is an acknowledgement program. It's an awards platform. And Good Morning America said it was the Oscars of voice acting. We have 110 categories. If you can believe there's 110 categories in voice acting, and there's even more to distinguish. But we have 110 categories. So there's these very particular genres of communication. And so it's a very interesting and powerful platform to get involved with. We have people all over the world, and I mean as far as Ethiopia, Latin America, New Zealand, literally all over the world that join us annually for the Voice Arts Awards. And it's run just like the Oscars, the Emmys, the Tonys, where you submit your work, that work gets judged. And again, in all those categories, so we have a lot of judges, and we have 6 judges that judge each category, and then it gets into nomination process, and then from there, the winner, and the winners gets announced at the award show. I have people all over the world literally falling in my arms on the red carpet, like literally in tears, crying that this was even something created, because it really is inclusive. And it includes all voices, and also the voices that are really making an impact in the world. We also have even specialized awards where it's the voice of humanity, and and last year it went to Dr. Henry Louis Gates. We all know he is incredible. We all know what the work he's done in that genre. And we also have an Icon Award winner, and we also have an Environment, the Voice of the Environment Award. So we really try to include people in their voices, using them as an instrument for good in the world. And that's what really it boils down to. I came from a place, I grew up in the civil rights era. I couldn't get acknowledged to save my life. And in return, my heart was always there. So in return, it's kind of shocking that I created a platform along with my partner that acknowledges so many voices and so much good in the world, and how people use their voices as their instrument. So I'm really grateful how that turned around, because I could have been someone in jail. Believe me, I could have been someone that was so, kind of down on her luck, that I could have ended up on a different path than I did. So I'm very grateful for that. And I also love helping people, and also the confidence that people get from working with their own instrument. And how I love to work with people is connecting their truth to their voice. And so I've had a lot of success with people in terms of getting into the voiceover industry, or people in corporate settings, or wherever they may come from. So I feel privileged and honored to be here, to be talking about this particular topic. I didn't even know that would happen in my lifetime, to be honest with you. So it's a joy to start bringing that out, and how these issues can be solved and looked at and be seen and be heard.
And Joan, the work that you're doing, I think, is really being heard on
Yes,
such
yes.
a large scale. I think there's never been a time, and I could be wrong, but I feel like now there's so many diverse voices in voiceover,
Totally.
that what you're doing is so important. Back in the day, you had to have that squeaky clean voice, and that cliched voice. But now, like, you'll hear a Regina King, who's an established actor,
Yes.
doing Cadillac voiceovers.
Yes.
Her voice is, it's very deep, it's very resonant, kind of raspy.
Yeah,
not somebody
that's
that you
true.
would think would be in the front of the line for a voiceover. Lena Waithe, who does voiceovers. It took me a minute to realize that was even her, because I'm like, wow, that voice just sounds so authentic. It sounds like somebody that, lives in my apartment complex, somebody that, I work with, or somebody that
that
I
is
dinner with.
true. Dion, that's true. But in voiceover, there is a difference between celebrity voiceovers and what is called scale voiceovers. So celebrity voiceovers, if they get a celebrity to do their product, they're thrilled. And actually, didn't really matter what their voice sounds like in front of a microphone. But when you're a scale actor like myself and thousands of others, all these things all of a sudden change. What the rules are for a celebrity are not the same rules for voice actors. So you have to really learn how to communicate, how to have your intention land. I mean, actors do that. That's what they do. But voice actors don't necessarily have that training. What they may have is a great voice, but they don't necessarily have the mechanics behind it, where actors have the mechanics behind it, but they may not have the voice, where if they were just going out for voice acting, they'd become a voice actor. So it's kind of like in the voiceover world, it's like two different camps almost. But I really appreciate actors because they have all the intention, and they know how to read scripts. They know how to bring a script to life. And that's a big part of it. How you analyze and interpret copy is a big part of it. But, there's also the casting. And now more than ever, I noticed that content creators are looking for diverse voices. And you're hearing that now more and more on TV. It wasn't like that until 2020, until the summer of 2020. It had not been like that. It completely changed after that. And so I'm actually grateful that it did. I'm not that happy as to why it did, but I'm happy that it did. It's starting to include all kinds of voices. And now what the issue seems to be is how to direct people of color. And that's actually always been the case, believe it or not. So there's that happening. And I know Pandora created even like a booklet of language, how to direct Black talent. It's kind of odd to my ear, but I've had experiences with people where they have said to, for example, the engineer, when I'm recording a spot, they've said, oh, she's really great, but can she add a little cotton to her voice? So that issue has always been here. It's now only being addressed in terms of directing people of color. So, one thing I'd like to put out is that one way to do that, if there's such an issue about it, is to maybe role play. And role playing in the sense that have a talent of color direct a director, so that you can hear the languaging, so you can hear, how to get underneath the person that you're directing of color. And I think role playing really does create a lot of answers, right? That maybe if you read it, you still might not get it. But if you're actively involved, then you can get it. And also you can feel like you can direct many types of people at that point, I guess.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I think that that's really important for people who are listening, who've had, thoughts about getting into your field, but just didn't know the how, didn't know the nuts and bolts about, how do we kind of take that next step. So I definitely appreciate that. I think that that's very necessary. And the fact that more diverse voices are being heard should inspire even more people to enlist as well, right?
Yes, and hopefully it will. And also enlist content creators to think of us more often and to hire us in the roles that have our background, right? More and more that's starting to happen. But again, it's only been recent. And part of it is, I think that there's been a communication gap. And that's why I was suggesting role playing as a way to close the gap, so that you can get into the bones of the person that you're going to be directing and not have any issues about it.
Sorry, I had to plug my phone. Oh. I'm sorry about that.
Your voice knocked it over. I get it, Dion.
Well, something you said earlier that I really wanted to follow up on, because this leads into my next question, Joan, is when you mentioned how things changed in the summer of 2000.
Yes.
How we were essentially the shiny penny about a year ago. And it led to a lot of corporate initiatives. A lot of companies, began to kind of wave the flag in the wake of the George Floyd murder.
Yes.
When the whole world got woke before woke became a
word,
an culturally appropriated bad word.
Right.
I mean, So next I want to go around the room and talk about real change. You know,
Mm,
change that isn't a corporate buzzword, or you
mm.
know, let's all, we're in this together, empty slogans. Like, what does real change that affects over time, change that doesn't run out after
Yeah,
the marches end, right? Change that doesn't end after we've all gone home from rallies, change that doesn't
right.
end when our elected politicians, present company obviously excluded, moves on to the next hot button item or topic. What does real change feel like, and how is it implemented in all of your walks? So we'll start with Nicole on that.
So, very interesting question. And I think there's a long tail to this, right? So, we always talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion being a journey. And I think people get it twisted, if I could use that word, since we're using words that are that are now more hip. People get it twisted when they think this is a short-term gain. It is not. It is a long-term gain. It means that we have to have intentionality, and that intentionality has to meet impact. And Joan said it best. If you don't have both, then you're looking at things that are a flavor of the month and not things that have sustainability. So I like to say, when it comes to success in this space, success means sustainability. It means when I'm no longer doing this work at SiriusXM, if the CEO, Jennifer Witz, is no longer doing this work at SiriusXM, that all of these efforts live on. If they do not, then I haven't done my job. We haven't done our job. If we don't have things, initiatives, activities, whatever we want to call them, that live beyond who we are as individuals. It's not about the person. It's about everything that we put in it so that all of the people can feel as though they have a place to call home. At the end of the day, long gone are the days where people could separate their work from their personal, right? Those of us that have been working a long time know that there were times where we didn't talk about religion, we didn't talk about politics, we didn't talk about experiences that happened outside of those four walls. Well, those days are gone. And until companies get that, then they're going to constantly have a problem on their hand around people wanting to show up to be their authentic self. So change means doing things that are sustainable. Change for companies really mean going outside of your own walls. So clearly, right, there's an effort from my behalf, the behalf of my team, and those in the company to think about employees. Critical, absolutely critical. What we have to do now, and what we started to do, is think outside of our own walls. And how can we influence what's happening outside of our walls? And so that really is when your impact starts to go global, if you will, if your impact starts to grow exponentially. And we started to do that. So we have a lot of internal things happening, from recruitment. I talked a little bit about the HBCUs. We have development opportunities that we're working through. We're talking about not just buying talent. Buying talent is important if you don't have it in-house. But how do we then recognize those that are already there? How do we give a voice, since we're talking about voices, to those that are already in the company? So we're trying to balance that buy versus build strategy when it comes to talent. And then we're making sure our leaders have a voice in this. This is not the work of Nicole and the DE&I team. It is the work of the entire company. So when we talk about voices again, every voice has to be heard. A lot of people think, oh, well, what does this diversity thing have to do with me? And I say everybody has a diversity story. If you sit down and think about it long enough, you have a diversity story. So how do we take that story, make sure people hear it, and make sure that you leverage that story to help make movement and change across the organization? And so we're doing that. We tap leaders all the time. I said, don't ever say to me, you don't know what to do, because I always have things for you to do. And that means getting engaged, walking the walk and talking the talk. And so when I think about what we do outside of our walls, I love this particular initiative because it has legs beyond, again, what I'll see in my career. But we have this initiative we call it Stand for Sonic Diversity. And it gets to exactly what Joan was talking about, voices, and how sometimes this thing we call the sonic color line creates this invisible line where people seem to reward voices that are non-voices of color versus rewarding voices of color. And so we've started this initiative where we're asking all of our peers, competitors sometimes in the industry to do what we're doing, taking a look at all of the voices that we have on our roster. Are we ensuring that we have Black voices or voices of color in that roster? Where we're creating some form of equity around those that get opportunities to give their voice and lend their voice into this space. We're saying to people, you know, Black roles, white roles, we need to break all of that down and make sure we're giving the role to the folks that really represent whatever it is you're trying to say. No more of this sound more Black or sound less Black or some of the things that Joan mentioned. How about just be your authentic self? Authenticity reigns supreme, and authenticity is what really will drive things to the next level. And so we've asked companies to do like us and take a stand with us, help us make movement, help us influence the industry so that we ensure that there are more voices of color in the conversation. And so that's just one thing, again, that will live beyond me, live beyond our CEO, live beyond all of us in the company and have real sustainable change. It's about the journey. It's about being true to the journey. And it's always testing yourself if my intentionality is matching my impact. And if there's a no there, you got to go back to the drawing board. You have to say, I need to do both. And so how do I do both? That's where sustainability becomes key, when the two are congruent and have the same impact, if you will. What I wanted to do is exactly what I did, and it had the right impact on the people that I'm trying to help.
And Larry, Nicole mentions sustained change, which is something, you know, long after we're no longer the shiny penny, about instilling these values in the next generation early, so that they know the ebbs and flows of corporate America and how, you know, we go from, you know, 0 to 100 and sometimes back to 0, and how to weather these storms. And I'm sure those are qualities that you know you instill in your young people at SLAM, you know, pretty early, just to kind of prepare for, you know, the changing nature of the companies and corporations that they'll soon be aligned with,
as well as the world that they live in. And you mentioned 2020, how everything changed. It changed for us. The day we all went to basically what I call pandemic mode, which I call it March 13th, it was the day we were going to launch the first ever live national radio show, hosted, directed, produced by high school students. And we had to pull it back for a few weeks. And our high school students said, we want to have this voice. So we did it on Zoom. We launched the show 4 weeks later. They did it throughout the entire summer. They didn't do it for a grade. They did it for the pride of having a voice. And what was beautiful that came out of it, again, circumstances not beautiful, to kind of mirror what Nicole was saying earlier, but or it might have been Joan, actually. I'm sorry if I got that confused. Through a terrible situation that we were going through last summer, they got to learn a lot about themselves, about the things they were going to talk about. And there were some rough moments where students wouldn't necessarily agree with each other on the air. And it made for a very interesting dynamic where they had to fix it themselves. They had to not fight and pout and moan, but to learn how to work together and learn how to understand each other, even if some of their value systems were different. But the one thing we did do is we opened up the floodgates and told them, okay, it's time to open up and tell us how you feel. And you know, sometimes young adults will say the dastardliest things, but what are we doing? We're getting them at a young age. We're teaching them they have a voice. We're molding them. And when we say right from wrong, we want them to understand how to do things correctly, how to be open-minded and understand the world we live in today, which I think a lot of older teachers don't live in that world. And I think that if you offer our students the ability to let themselves be themselves, it's amazing what you get in return from them. And one of the things we get in return is a complete understanding of things that sometimes I have to ask them, okay, help me a little bit with this because I don't exactly know. And since I'm on the radio, I don't want to follow it up. I'll be very honest. When it came to pronouns and referring to certain people the correct way and not offending, I really had to sit down with a student and say, okay, you need to explain this to me A to Z so I don't mess this up. Call me a boomer if you want, to use one of their terms. but I want to get this right before I ever get it wrong. And you know what? I think as adults, if we take that sensitivity to heart and we say, you know what, whether we agree or disagree, we want to understand. We want to be a world that loves, a country that loves, a people that love each other, regardless of anything. All that other stuff can work itself out. And I think there's an old saying in Spanish, con hablar se entiende. If you talk things out, you'll understand each other. Communication is such an amazing thing. And we work in an industry that sometimes we lack it. Why? So you should be able to speak, say what you want to say, and not be afraid of who you are. And the beauty at my level is that I get them at an age and I don't mold them. All I do is I tell them, guys, I want you to be who you want to be. And sometimes there's no sustainability. This month they're one way and next month they're another way, but that's okay. Weren't we all teenagers and changed their mind? It's beautiful to see it develop. And when they put on their cap and gown in the May of their senior year and they look at you and go, Mr. Milian, what a great ride the last 4 years have been with you. I've learned so much. I'm so different today than I used to be. And some of our students go into the military to serve our military proudly. They do different things in different walks of life, but they learn their own voice. And some of them are going to be darn good broadcasters. We do have several that have come out of the program, and it's just amazing to see their turnaround. But what I love is the ability to give someone a voice, whether they're a great student or a not so great student. It doesn't matter. I don't want to exclude. I want to include everyone. There's a true story. If you walk through the doors of our radio station inside of the school and you're a student that doesn't have my class and you peek in, guess what I do? I grab you and I put you on the radio. We're going to get the cobwebs out right away. What are you doing, Mr. Milian? I'm getting you hooked. Let's go. And it's amazing how many times they come back the next day. So if we get them young, then we can really show them what it is to be in a dynamic and energetic and full of love world, a world that doesn't judge. And I got to be honest with you that, I've lived a lifetime of being judged, from, being a product of a mixed marriage to not looking the same. And I came to Miami and I was a bunch of Hispanics, but I was a Northerner and I was a lot different and I thought a lot differently. I was always outside the box. But that's cool because I think right now it's kind of cool to be outside that box. And our students, they see that I'm willing to roll up my sleeves, make mistakes, and learn from them the same way they learn from me. And it's amazing how the world can function if we just listen to each other. Those are my 2 cents.
One of the drawbacks to having a spirited conversation is that we got 6 minutes left.
Sorry. Radio guy.
No. This has been great. I do want to go back to you, Joan. And, Larry has mentioned the power of education, how that's kind of weathered the storm for a lot of students once they get into the business. From what you were saying earlier, the company that you run, look, the buck stops with you, right? Like it begins and ends with you. So you set the example, you set the tone. How have you been able to kind of, educate young people, clients alike? And what does sustained change for you mean for your organization, for your walk as well?
We have to unmute her.
Oh,
okay, hi. So sustained change is already in our DNA. So even when we started Society of Voice Arts and Sciences, we were already about choosing diversity and diverse people to come and represent voiceover. So that's always been in the makings. My partner and I, we're always brainstorming in terms of just naturally how we can incorporate more people from diverse, places that come together in voiceover, because our events, we probably have close to 100 people in the actual event who are teaching and educating and sharing. So my partner and I, we make phone calls. I mean, it takes work to do it. And I think sometimes corporations don't want to necessarily do the work. Yes, it takes work, but it takes the same amount of work to find who you think is the right person in any particular position or job. So it's the same amount of work, it just may be different. So yes, we're constantly brainstorming in how we can include an international kind of representation of voice acting. That's always been there. But one thing I do think, just in my travels and in talking with people that do hire and people that are casting and all that, is that one of the things that seems to be an issue is hard work. Like, it takes hard work to find people. I think that you have to create an environment that's accountable so that there's an accountability group with each corporation or each project, that you install that so that you do the work that it takes to get the diversity in the project, in the corporation, whatever it may be. And you're accountable for that. And I do think that would make a difference. I do think that would really change things. And it's what we already do, and I already know it works because both my partner and I are very much accountable to who we bring in to do our events. And we make sure that they are coming from a place of diversity and inclusion and sharing their piece of the pie. If people realize that the end result, when you have a diverse group of people that are thinking together, brainstorming together, creating together, you're going to get a better product. You're going to get a more powerful corporation. If people understood the end game of that, no one would be hesitant. So that's why I say, in the meantime, create an accountability group, and that can make a difference for long-term change in corporations.
I'm sorry, say it again?
Within corporations or within organizations or whatever it may be. I do think that could help install long-term results.
And I think that's our job, really. You know,
I think it's that's how I see it.
Yeah. There are a lot of us charged, you know, with these lofty positions and what we do in the corporate sphere. But, you know, our job is to keep the company accountable. Our job is to raise our hand. Our job is to speak out. Our job is to, you know, call it out, call a thing, and continue to kind of have this conversation. Yes.
Yes. And I think that in today's world, I think when you do speak out, it's not necessarily you're going to get fired. I don't think people need to be afraid anymore for speaking out. You're not going to get fired. If anything, at this point, I think people would listen and take advantage of what they're hearing and seeing what they can do. But if you keep quiet, then of course you're not the solution, you're the problem too.
Yeah. Programs like this are definitely along those lines. We intend to keep speaking out and keep making it an issue long after we're no longer the shiny penny.
Yeah, and I love this program, and I really appreciate being here, and I can't even thank you enough. It's really, my colleagues on the panel are absolutely extraordinary. And the host, my God. Dion, yes,
wow. In that mirror.
No, thank you all. Thank you, Representative Clark. Thank you, Nicole Huey. Thank you, Larry Millian. Thank you, Joan Baker. Thank you to the Multicultural Media Caucus. This has been amazing. And the conversation, we haven't even scratched the surface. Like this continues. And thank you for all that you do for pushing diversity and the importance of authenticity in all of our walks. Thank you so much. I'll turn it back over to Representative Clark to take us out. Thank you.
Well, let me thank you, Dion. Let me thank you, Nicole, Joan, and Larry, for such a very dynamic and stimulating discussion this afternoon. Your efforts are truly setting the tone and building a momentum for increased diversity and inclusion in the industry's infrastructure. However, there's still much work to be done. And as I reflect on this being Black Music Month, History Month, I think it's important that we encourage our listeners to widen the aperture to all of the ways in which our experience is portrayed within the music, the culture, the entertainment industry. And remember that we are from an African diaspora. We are not a monolithic people. While Black is a racial categorization, when you go beneath the skin, we are everywhere. And the American tapestry is filled with the influences that we have brought to this great American experiment. So I really wanted to thank you all. Additionally, the Multicultural Media Caucus aims to support and advance issues related to diversity and inclusion in the media, in telecom, and the tech industry. I know my fellow co-chairs, and I look forward to working with each of you and your organizations in advance of this critical effort of diversity and inclusion. And with that, I want to make sure that our listeners know that they can find out more about the Multicultural Media Caucus by following the caucus at MMC on the Hill, one word, and me on social media at Rep Yvette Clark on all platforms, or by visiting my website at clark.house.gov. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for my newsletter. As a digression, Larry, do I see a photo of the World Trade Center behind you?
You do. As a matter of fact, I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. I went to a school, talk about diverse, St. Anne's. I went to St. Anne's in Brooklyn Heights, which is 4 blocks away from the promenade. And the promenade has a lot of fond memories for me. I'll be in New York in a couple of weeks. I'm going to go visit my old neighborhood in Brooklyn and go to the promenade. It looks a lot different, but I want to remember it like that from my childhood. And I'm very proud of being from New York. If you look around my house, everything is New York. Yes,
I picked up the vibe. I picked up the vibe.
Well,
so let me again just wish everyone a wonderful, safe summer. Stay safe, stay strong, stay healthy. Wear your mask if need be. Get vaccinated if you haven't, and take good care of one another. This has been an outstanding program, and I thank you all for giving of your time and your talent as we move forward here on Capitol Hill to embrace multiculturalism in the media space.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your efforts. Thank you so much for your efforts.